calendar.
Hello
Never mind.
and
There we go.
welcome to Morning
No, not yet.
Self-Care. Good morning. Okay.
Oh, no,
Hello
I
and
think you're all
welcome
right.
to.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know who is creating mess here.
Go, go,
Anyway,
go,
hello
go.
and welcome to.
Sorry. Just a little bit of timing there. Yeah, we're live. We're live. Good morning, Beena. Good morning.
Good morning, Grain, and good morning, everyone who is going to join us live and will watch us recorded later. You all are most welcome to join this morning's space, this morning's culture, this free space, this free sharing, because this is what we are offering. Completely free, unconditional sharing in the normal conversation type of words like jargons, unconditional love. We don't have unconditional love here, but we do have unconditional sharing. We share things and
Yeah,
without any
yeah,
conditions. So yeah, complete free sharing because this
yes.
is our choice, and we are making a deliberate choice to
Yeah,
share
yeah,
things, capital S share, with others. We
yeah.
are just opening it just for everyone, whoever wants to join. If they join, most welcome. Even if someone is not joining us, we are doing it and we are taking full responsibility and taking complete full joy and fun out of this because this is
Oh,
our
yeah.
deliberate choice.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
our
yeah,
joy and fun is not dependent on anyone's
yeah,
feedback or anyone's presence or anything. It's not like that we
yeah.
don't acknowledge that. Oh, we do love that. Whenever someone come, whenever someone make sure that, okay, we are aware of their presence, we love this. We are open for
Yeah,
questions. We are open for comments. We are open
yeah,
for
yeah.
dislikes and likes and everything. But
In other words,
our
we like
happiness,
cross-sharing, right?
yes,
Not just
our,
sharing one
our
way.
exactly. Our happiness, our fun and joy is not dependent on anyone else other
No,
than ourselves. This
no,
is the magic, this is the true essence of capitalist sharing. And what we are doing nowadays, we are busy with doing
no,
capital R reading of Carlos Castaneda's books about Don Juan with a very
no.
specific intent to not only know about Don Juan and know what he shared with Carlos, but also to connect with the intent of sharing he had. So we are doing this capital R reading. A capital R reading in itself is a very sophisticated and a very special concept from way of impeccability. But having a very specific intent connected to that, now it makes it so special, more and more and more special for me, at least I can say, because I am reading these books not just with, of course I want to know and I'm keen to understand what Carlos was going through at that time, how he was perceiving it or not perceiving it, and to exploring something new. It's a very adventurous story, by the way, very interesting story also, to explore something which is beyond your understanding, which is beyond your awareness. Unbelievably fun for me. Okay, but also, of course, it needs a lot of courage. But I'm reading this, doing capital R reading, reading beyond the incidents, happenings, events, and characters in the story. This is what capital R reading is, going beyond that and understand and connect with the intent. So this is what we are doing. And Don Juan, by the way, is
Absolutely.
I was really feeling pity for Carlos in the beginning, and Don Juan was very rude sometimes, like, okay, really continuously calling a person fool. Any alien will come to our planet, and if we try to explain what is culture and what is fashion and what is tradition to them, they might be act like exactly like Carlos. What is this? Like, why? Okay, what I have to do? And he was doing that same thing. So for me, the expectation part from Don Juan was not fun. That how can you expect something from someone who is not aware of it? That was my concern. That okay, yes.
Interesting.
So for me, I feel that sometimes Don Juan expecting a lot from a completely new person, like a child
No,
in front of him. So
no.
expectations were a bit high because the language is different. Even though he's
Interesting.
very fluent in language, of course, but still, those terms, those concepts are completely new. So to
Yeah,
explain that and having expectations, that okay, he will act exactly like you want him to do, or exactly like you yourself. It's sorry, it's a bit of exaggerated expectations. Sorry, Don Juan. But also from Carlos' side, this having this so entrenched into superiority paradigm, this Indian, that's that person, that old man, and assuming things that okay, that wisdom and awareness can only come from like really highly sophisticated, according to your understanding, sophisticated people, which is sorry, very very rude from Carlos' side. So they are also like kind of balancing
Yeah,
each other
yeah,
to their side, because Carlos' expectations were like, oh, the person is just will be more than happy, will crack 5-inch smile that oh, I'm going to give him money because he's a he's an Indian. Seriously. And
right,
you want them to teach you something, and having these expectations,
yeah,
that's why I want to pay you, then you have to tell, like he want a slave for that. So that was really really not so fun for me to hear from Carlos, because and after that, because now he's sharing the beginning of it. In the beginning I can give him a bit of leeway that okay, yes, he was coming from that mindset, but after having some understanding about Don, and if he
yeah.
would still do that, then really Syl was absolutely 100% right by scolding him, like being really
Oh,
rude
yeah,
to him that,
yeah,
oh, you're
yeah.
stupid, you are
But
foolish,
come
because
on, man. Some things, okay, you can't expect him to know, but some things are just kind of like and just common decency and sensibility and that, and making a little bit of effort. Uh, that's so, yeah. I give Carlos a hard time because, well, I'm scolding myself sometimes through Carlos, but other times he absolutely does justify, does warrant. Yeah, definitely
yes.
so. All right, let us continue. Journey to Ixtlan, part 10. We're on part 10 already. Brilliant. I was going to tag Lisa here real quickly. I'm really hoping Lisa comes and listens because I want to, want to explain about Mourner's cultures. You asked about that. So,
Okay, and in the meantime, I can just go on YouTube.
all right. So before we go, I have a story to share.
Mhm.
It, well, it came up for me. Just something that I guess it falls under memorable events or significant experiences, but that's a broad topic. It's memorable because it's anomalous, not necessarily memorable in the usual sense. You're going to see in a second. But
Okay.
I don't know. Who knows why it comes up? Stuff comes for no particular reason. Like I was teasing Beena the other day, just remembering how we used to do those sing-song things as kids, and random stuff comes up, and I like to pay attention to it because it's very rewarding. And in this case, I, I haven't been able to find the reward, but in telling the story, I have in the past seen, especially when you write it out in detail, and I did with all my experiences. And Lisa was part of this. Lisa, I'm talking to, at that time, she was working every day, and I would be on text chat, and so I told her this long story. And it was like a 750,000 words long story. Anyway, yeah, but this isn't directly connected to that, but in a way it is because it was all how things came about. So when I was in standard 4, which is 6th grade in America, I don't know if that's the same with you, Bina. You started grade 1?
Yes.
All right, so
Yes.
then it's 6th grade for you as well. In other words, round about age 11 going on 12. Right?
Mhm.
Uh,
Yes.
yeah, so that would be the age. And I was a prefect. Now, for Americans, a prefect is not a hall monitor. It's no
Mhm.
comparison, right? I mean, a prefect is basically they run the day-to-day stuff. Yeah, do a lot of things. Well, and in this case, one of the duties of the prefects was when after a break, we didn't call it lunch break. We just called it break. And I think there were two of them, if I remember correctly, a longer one and a shorter one. Yeah, did you have that too, Beena? That's a vague memory, which really surprises me. Did you have one or two breaks?
No, just one.
Just one. I, for some reason, thought we used to have two, a longer one and a shorter one. But anyway, this was during the break where, it's yes, you eat your lunch, but really it's a play and a relaxation thing, because in America, lunch break is a big deal. You go to the cafeteria and there are no cafeterias there. And, well, not everybody even brought lunch with them. You're going to have a hard time if you don't, because you're growing kids and you need something to kids are always hungry. I never ate enough as a kid. I just, I don't know, but undernourished in that sense. But anyway, that's sort of a different story. Well, I guess it's related. But, so anyway, the way things worked, you had a little lunchbox, which is plastic, typically a little plastic thing with a lid on, and you put it in there, and that's it, right? To keep your stuff fresh. Or you'd wrap it in something. But that was mostly, and they sold them as specific lunch boxes. And what did your lunch comprise of? 2 slices of bread made in 2 sandwiches, right? You put one on top of the other, and you put your stuff on it. Well, first you put your stuff on, put another one on, and you cut it in half, and that's it. A sandwich is 1 slice of bread, one on top of the other, half on top of the other half, right? And that's what you took to school. That was it.
Yes.
I remember some kids brought other stuff sometimes, but very rarely. Fruit, or I don't know, maybe a little cupcake or something. But the standard was those 2 sandwiches. And what was on there? All right, Marmite. It's a long explanation to say what, butter, Marmite, well, margarine, Marmite, or jam, the toppings on the bread, cheese and tomato. That was about it. That was the range. Okay, jams could be different. Sometimes you got cheese and jam, right? But it's kind of nice in a way. A jam being, in America, jelly, right? A preserve, a fruit preserve you spread on your bread. Jelly over there is what you call Jello. Jello being the brand name, but the category, because we didn't have the brand Jello, we had royal jelly. So jelly is what you peculiarly call. I don't know why Americans have to mess things up, Anyway, in terms of this kind of language stuff, it was all sensible. Why you changed it, I don't know. But anyway, so jam or jelly on the bread, and that was it. I don't know. Did you have any other stuff, toppings on your bread, Beena, beside those?
Yes. Sometimes like minced. So that was and eggs.
Yeah. That maybe sometimes you got cold cuts. Cold cuts.
Yes.
Of the various kinds. We in America it's called bologna, which is a distortion of bologna, but who can pronounce bologna? Okay, so it became bologna, but in South Africa it was called polony, Polony. That was on the cold cut meats, right? Polony. Anyway, so you get very cheap. It was like the cheapest possible cold cut meats. And cold cuts weren't a big deal then. Not like now. Today you can get turkey breast and chicken breast and honey glazed and all of these varieties. Very little, but yes, sometimes you got a bit of cold cut chicken on there. But meat was expensive. Food in when I grew up was very expensive. Yeah, I mean, people complain when the food prices went up. Because of COVID, the consequences of supply and distribution of COVID, and people not being able to work in the factory. Like in the cold cuts factories, especially, they had big fallouts, and they had to recall some product because of COVID. And so anyway, but people thought it was expensive then. Not even close. Not even close. In America, food is very, very cheap. Even when you think it's expensive, it's still very, very cheap compared to other places in the world, right? It's not even close, right? So, right, we weren't super poor, but we didn't have any spare money either. Groceries was a big deal. I mean, I did most of the grocery shopping anyway, so I know, right? And so, cold cuts meat is a luxury. Yeah. Anyway, my point that I'm getting to my story, right? So you make these sandwiches and you have them. And while you eat your two sandwiches, I made my own sandwiches by that time. Just the way things worked out. But still, the standard was two slices of bread, which was not nearly enough as far as I was concerned.
Oh, yes,
So what
yes. When children are running and they are growing, it
it
is
was, like
nothing.
I said, I my brother is 2 inches taller than me, and he probably could have even been taller. And not that tall is an issue, but I'm just saying we weren't small,
Yes, yes.
and just most of my friends ended up, well over 6 feet, six
Mm.
two, 6'3", somewhere around there, right? That was
Yes,
typical, yeah. But I
yes.
never got there because I just didn't eat enough, and I knew I wasn't eating enough. But yeah, I didn't want to abuse what little food we had. So because of just not taking advantage of stuff, I always ended up with too little. I don't know.
Mm.
Just sometimes one's integrity and conscience is a bit of a liability. But so what? I'm happy with how tall I am. I don't need to be bigger. All good. Anyway, so now you eat your two sandwiches. So now I'm relating this to being a prefect. Okay, the prefect in grade 4. It was very peculiar in that school. Typically, it's only the last year of school that you have prefects, but they had the last 2 years. This was in the they call them primary schools, which is from first grade to seventh grade, and then you go to high school. The first 2 years are like kind of sort of semi preschool. Right? At least there they call them kindergarten, right? Sabai, Sabi, and then you start standard one. Anyway, that's the way the system. Anyway, so I'm a prefect now. And one of the duties of the prefect is, basically you're there to maintain order and discipline. Not that that was always done, but okay. Or at least not by me. So one of the duties was when the bell rings at the end of the lunch, or at the end of the break, it's not a lunch, just break. It wasn't called a lunch break, just break. You ate that lunch that you took with you. Or it wasn't even called lunch. It was just called your sandwiches, right, Beena? I don't think it was called lunch. Was it called lunch by you?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
was okay. Well, so it's just called your sandwiches. Did you have sandwiches for school? It wasn't even called lunch, right? I mean, it would be better if it was called lunch because then it could be a bit more stuff added to it. A little drink maybe, or you just drank water.
Yes,
That was it.
yes,
Wa- Water in the bathrooms. Well, we didn't call them bathrooms either. They were just called toilets. But there was no
yes.
bathing in
But
them. I mean, toilets and basins. That was
exactly.
what was in there. You
Toilets.
drank from the
Yes.
basins in the, you know. And don't put your mouth on the faucet. Use your hand. A lot of kids put their mouths on the faucet. But anyway, so one of the duties of the prefect was when the bell rings to go back to class, you line up in your different standards, your different classes, and you all line up, and then the prefect says, okay, and the first line goes, and then just an orderly way to go in instead of a whole big mass going in and clogging up the stairs and the passages. I mean, there's some sort of logic to it, but I was in another school where there wasn't that, and it wasn't an issue. All right. Anyway,
No,
in the
I
last
never
2 years
had
of
that.
schools.
And it was fun.
Right. I mean, you did that as well. You lined up, and then the prefect said, "Okay, walk line, go right." Okay.
No,
So this
no,
was the
we
thing.
just go along.
Oh, you just went chaotic. All right. All right.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, like I said, I was explaining to Joseph, who thinks I grew up in a racist culture. People in charge were racist. The average person didn't have any idea of racism. He didn't really have any connectivity with it. But nonetheless, I grew up in an obedience culture, not a racist culture. And that was all about obedience and discipline. That was the whole big deal of everything. All right. So this one day, this is the story now. I'm setting up the parameters so you can understand the story. This one day, I'm letting the getting ready. They're lining up. The bell is rung, and it takes a little while for them to get lined up because you're all over the grounds, right? I mean, school grounds can be quite big, so it takes a little bit of time to get there. And I noticed the one boy isn't finished eating his sandwich. First of all, this
Hmm.
is puzzling to me. How are you at the end of break and you haven't finished eating your sandwich? Tina,
Hmm. Yes.
isn't that odd? And and
Yes.
and and and, and the boy's a little bit like, well, what do I do with this now? I said, oh, I'll take it. I'll finish it for you. He didn't look like he wanted to finish it even.
Hmm.
Okay. He gives me the sandwich. It's like half a sandwich. It wasn't even half eaten or not. It's just half of the slice of bread.
Yes.
I don't know what was on it, but whatever it was edible. And so he gives it to me. And while I'm waiting for everybody to come, I eat his sandwich. And then another boy gives me a single sandwich, right? Top and bottom, one slice.
Yes.
And then another, and then another, and then another, and I had a whole stack of them.
Wow.
Just blew my mind. I believe that I had, well, I don't know, 9 or 10 of them,
Wow.
which I ate. But I remember
Wow.
thinking I have so much because I better hurry up and eat, otherwise I'm going to be late for class. I had to get a bit of leeway as a prefect, but still,
Hmm.
nonetheless, the puzzling thing was, how did this happen, Beena? In my wildest imagining, I never ever seen anybody not eating their lunch, and not that I looked for it specifically, but how do you not finish your lunch? I mean, it's not like there's no time. There's plenty time. I mean, we had time to play marbles and I don't know, do all sorts of stuff. So there's plenty time to eat. It's not like there's a shortage of time. I just and that you're willing to give it away. Right. Okay. The first guy, I don't know, maybe he thought I'm hungry and he's helping me out. Okay. And the second and the third guy. But once you get past and you see I've already got a stack in my hand and you're giving me more, like they wanted to get rid of it. That was the impression the first boy had. Like he didn't know what to do with it and he was looking to get rid of it. Oh, I'm this, throwing away food, this is out of the question. This is just out of the question. Uh, so having something, if you don't want it and you don't want to eat it, you can't throw it away. You have to find some other place for it. Anyway, so but here's the other peculiarity. All right, so lots of peculiarities involved. One, that the boys weren't eating it. And
Yes.
I'm a picky eater. It's not like they had weird stuff on there that wasn't edible. They were all perfectly edible, just normal stuff. All right. I can understand one boy, maybe he doesn't like Marmite or whatever it was that's on there. Marmite's a bit of an acquired taste. But 9 or 10 of them, impossible. Absolute impossibility, Beena. Yeah? It made no sense whatsoever. And it was just pure chance that I saw the first guy, and I never expected anybody. And then the rest offered to give it to me. Holy moly, this was like, this blew my mind. I mean, I ate it all. It's no problem to eat it all. It just shows how hungry I was, that you get 2 sandwiches and I could eat 9 or 10, no problem. It's not an issue finishing those 9 or 10, but no, it's nothing. I've probably eaten another 9 or 10. But that they had it available blew my mind. Okay, now, what do you think? Where do you think the story goes, Beena?
Okay, I personally feel, if I recall my childhood, that was a boring stuff. That was truly boring, like really, like having a same thing in the lunch time and just eating. And also, as a child, in my mind, eating in a lunchtime is a waste of time. We could play. So why I have to just sit and eat this? So that was
All right,
also even
all right. Well, maybe so. But,
even though
to me, I can play and eat at the same time.
I don't want to disturb anything. Like, okay, really, for me, it was like, come on. Like, who is
Yeah.
going to waste lunchtime in eating when we can just
Well,
go?
when you're hungry, sorry, hunger trumps that, I was always hungry.
Yeah, sometimes, yes, of course, I
Yeah.
know. And also on
Yeah.
top of that, having same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, like see.
But that's your takeaway on the story. I'm asking, where do you think my story goes from there? Right. So I'm telling the story. I'm standing there, getting ready to let the boys go in on the lines. I see the boy. He gives me a sandwich and another, and I end up with 9 or 10. And they go into the class, and I kind of, while they're going in, I'm eating as fast as I can, and on my way back to class so that I can finish my sandwiches. I don't remember if I did finish or not. If I didn't, I kept it over for the next break or after school. Either way, right? But where do you think the story goes from there? That's what I'm saying. Like, finish the story. Where do you think this
Okay,
continues
for
to?
me, what I was suspecting that they all just want to have good relationship with the prefect. That's it.
So what do you think
So
happened the following day?
yes, so then then they will come up and say, okay, oh, if you want, so we can share and ask for something in favor, in return.
Never happened again.
Wow.
Never happened again. One time only. That was it. Yeah, in my
Wow.
mind, I'm thinking, okay, if anybody's got extra food, hey, you know what? I'll be happy to take your food off your hands because you don't want to throw it away or you don't want to eat it for whatever reason. Fine, come give it to me. Never happened again. Never ever saw anybody with an extra. It's just that one day. And it blew my mind that this was even possible. One boy, even one boy having a sandwich that they don't want to finish. And not because they don't like it. Because that wasn't the issue. It wasn't because, this is stuff I don't like to eat. I never ever saw anybody ever not wanting to finish it. Even for stuff that you didn't quite like, you ate it anyway. I never saw that before. I never saw any boy ever not wanting to finish their sandwiches. Never mind 9 or 10
Wow.
of them. One time only. One time only.
Wow.
It just so now to me this becomes anomalous. Yes, it was anomalous in with one boy. It became ridiculously anomalous with 9 or 10 of them. I'm like, where are you getting these sandwiches from? It's the end of lunch break. How do you possibly? I never ever knew any boys that had lunch after lunch. After the break, had sandwiches left over. At 9 or 10, it was just incredible. But that was it. Next day, nothing. And I was like, wow, this would be cool. All right, well, I'll get extra sandwiches, from
Yes.
those who for some reason have extra. Never,
Mhm.
ever, never happened again.
Wow. This is really shocking for me.
It's astonishing, Beena. Just an anomaly. But, I was thinking about personal power the
Mhm.
day or day before. It's been on my mind a bit because we're going to get to it with Don Juan. He already mentioned a little bit about personal power, but they're going to come. And I have other that may just have been a materialization of my personal power. But I wasn't thinking, oh, I'd like sandwiches. There was no intent to find sandwiches. I just happened to know I was doing the boy a favor. Because
Yes.
I saw him all awkward and uncomfortable, and he's like, what do I do with this? I'll take it off your hands.
Mhm.
Right? So I was
Yes.
doing him a favor, not like looking out for myself kind of a thing. That my intent was to help him out. Oh, okay, it helps me too. But you know what I mean? I wasn't like I'm looking for a sandwich from anybody. It was never on my mind ever to even look to think to say, well, if you not gonna, because it was unimaginable that anybody wouldn't finish their lunch, their sandwiches. It's just, so when I
Wow.
saw that, I was like, really? Okay, wow, that's surprising that you have it, but all right, since you don't want it, obviously, I'll take it. And then to get 9 or 10, I mean, I remember standing with that big pile in my hand. I was like almost a bit embarrassed, but yeah, too bad. I don't care. I'm hungry. You don't want it, fine. Like, I don't know, maybe the boys thought I was collecting leftover sandwiches. Not necessarily that I'm going to eat it. I'm just doing a prefect thing. But why only once?
Hmm. No idea, sir. Really, this is surprising.
It is an incredibly anomalous and peculiar experience. And that's what I'm saying. I can't put it down to a materialization of personal power because then you would have think it would be every day, you know. But but also though, I think it's the universe letting me know the world does not work the way you think it does. And that was probably the first instance where I didn't necessarily think specifically the world doesn't work, but it was just anomalous, and it always stayed with me. Look, it's still there. Yeah, I don't know how many zillions of years later, you know, it never left me. Stuff like this never leaves me because it's not resolved. Yeah, when you resolve it. Sometimes when you share stories, usually, almost always, when you go over the stories in detail like I am now, something comes in, some realization, some awareness. I haven't found any on this. It's too intriguing. Anyway, anybody have any theories? I'd like to know. Lisa, if you do join us, I messaged her, please. And she was live. She was online. Oh, it said so. No,
I can trust.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. No, I don't know if she's here still or not, but anyway, if you are, Lisa, I'm keen. Just leave me a note there to say you're here, so that I can. I don't want to. Yeah, it says active now, and I messaged her. But sometimes people are active, but they're not at the phone or at the computer. All right, so let's go to our reading. This story though, Beena, if something comes to you that strikes you as interesting, let me know.
Yes.
And I think Frauke might be joining us. I don't know. Glau2648. Could that be Frauke on IG? I don't know
I
why. I
have no
think
idea.
so. Or Gaia. Anyway. Hello, Glau. Hello, Glau. Hello, Glau. I think you might be a friend of ours, but not. Hello, anyway. All right. I just said you joined
This
us
is
there.
this is very interesting and unusual. Sometimes things happen and we try to
Yeah.
find some kind of understanding about them, but we
Yeah.
couldn't. Like this one, especially, like in my mind, I was assuming like, oh yes, so now they are trying to have some good terms with prefect, or maybe it is just that they always want to get rid of something. Like, oh yes, like who is going to eat
Right.
same thing
I mean,
every day?
yes, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so but again, I wasn't the strict prefect. Some were, you do anything wrong, they take you to the principal, you end up with a caning. You
Yes.
know, I think I took one boy, maybe two, to the principal's office, and he was like in first or second grade, and he was a real
Oh,
little bully. Yeah, I mean, he was
oh,
really, and they like little kiddies, man. Some of them are like they're barely out of kindergarten. They're like almost babies still. Toddlers, kind of. At least right? They 5 6 years old, but still. Uh, I said, no, this is not cool, boy. And this kid resisted me. I had to, uh, uh, it was physically difficult for me to get him into the principal's office. He put his legs up on the door and he resisted the hell out of me. He was absolutely terrified of going there. And then, once the principal shut the door, I heard him bouncing around, jumping around, running around all over that office, like over the desk, up the walls, whatever. Anyway, it was just too astonishing. I'm like, really? Wow. But he was really horrid and mean. So I never saw any trouble from him after that. So okay, uh, to me that was somewhat justified. But other than that, I never took people to the office. But some would do that regularly. So I'm saying I wasn't a prefect that you needed to curry favor with. I just did my things like that, and that was it. I was kind of minimal in that sense. I wasn't authoritarian as it.
hmm.
Yeah. So carrying favor with me, that was absolutely not necessary. Yeah. And some of them were older boys also, which absolutely in also wasn't necessary. They're all more or less either a grade younger or a grade higher, because that was the block where we were. So they were all more or less in the same age. Just in the
Uh,
kindergarten
it,
was
it,
another.
it could be it could be, of course, the queuing, the power of queuing there. That okay, someone did that. Okay, yes, so I'm going to do
Right,
that
right.
too.
Well, absolutely. When one sees, oh, okay, no, but the fact that they had it available, then you would, if they had it available that day, why was that day special and no other days? And no days before that. Like I said, I'd never ever noticed and observed anybody having, extra sandwiches at the end of that. And it surprised me, the first boy. Then so many. It blows my mind. It doesn't make any logical sense, no matter which way you break it down. It wasn't a special day. It wasn't a shorter break. It was like, okay, maybe the bell rang early or something and they didn't get to finish, or there was maybe something had gone on that I wasn't aware of, but that would have been, I don't know, maybe there was a fight, there's a fight, everybody goes and watches the fight, like it's like an organized fight, not just randomly breaking out. That's a big event, and so, all right. But still, you eat your sandwich while watching the fight, for heaven's sake. I don't know. There wasn't anything that day, at least not that I was aware. Very peculiar. Very, very, very peculiar. Strange. Strange but true. Strange but true. And yeah. Isn't that fascinating story, Beena?
Oh, yeah.
And the reason I'm
This is
telling the story is for two reasons. It was on my mind, and just sharing anomalies and stuff that's happening, like in Don Juan's world, strange stuff happens, right? And there's usually some significance to it. I haven't been able to find the significance here, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to come, right? Like I said, it could be a story of personal power, but then it would have been regularly, so it wasn't that. Maybe the universe was telling me that, hey, this is possible, and I had to ask after that. That's possible. In that culture, asking for the sandwiches, I suppose I could have done it. Said, hey, if you got extra that you don't want, I'll be happy to take it off your hands. But it would have compromised me. Would have compromised. But yeah, maybe self-importance. I don't know. Yeah, I still, but still, the world does not work the way we think it does. That to me is the lesson. Yeah, and certainly, I never took it then as in that particular way. Yeah, that things can happen that don't make any sense on a regular basis. It just never made sense to me, and I left it there. Right? So I have to take it further. Take it further. All right, let's continue. Let's continue with our reading here. Beena, would you like to read, please? I'm busy
okay.
sharing. There we go. There we go. So we're getting to a new little separate story here. And this is under the heading of the chapter is titled Death as an Advice.
Yes.
Carlos is going to we're going to get there. We haven't gotten there yet. Don Juan he talked about change, right? And Carlos, his self-importance was getting him all miffed and annoyed and bothered and whatever. And he said, oh, he likes this idea of losing self-importance, but he couldn't. So he was getting very stressed and bothered at not being able to lose self-importance. Right? And this is the tail end of that now. All right, please continue, Beena.
I said that I believed we were so different that there was no possibility of our getting along.
Let me just pause right there. I said I believed we were so different, there was no possibility of our getting along. Do you hear the difference?
Right.
I read it. Huh?
Yes.
Is that fascinating?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, one of us has to change.
He said, staring at the ground.
And you know who.
He began humming a Mexican folk song and then lifted his
Let's just
head.
say for grain, the he here is Don Juan, and the I here is not Beena, but Carlos. So Beena is reading this. We're reading, Beena's reading Carlos's parts, and I'm reading Don Juan's parts. Okay.
Yes. He began humming a Mexican folk song and then lifted his head up abruptly and looked at me. His eyes were fierce and burning. I wanted to look away or close my eyes, but to my utter amazement, I could not break away from his gaze. He asked me to tell him what I had seen in his eyes. I said that I saw nothing, but he insisted that I had to voice what his eyes had made me feel aware of. I struggled to make him understand that the only thing his eyes made me aware of was my embarrassment, and that the way he was looking at me was very discomforting. He did not let go. He kept a steady stare. It was not an outright menacing or mean look. It was rather a mysterious but unpleasant gaze. He asked me if he reminded me of a bird. A bird? I exclaimed. He giggled like a child and moved his eyes away from me.
Yes, a bird, a very funny bird.
He locked his gaze on me again and commanded me to remember. He said with an extraordinary conviction that he knew I had seen that look before. My feelings of the moment were that the old man provoked me against my honest desire every time he opened his mouth. I stared back at him in obvious defiance. Instead of getting angry, he began to laugh. He slapped his thigh and yelled as if he were riding a wild horse. Then he became serious and told me that if it was of utmost importance that I stop fighting him and remember that funny bird he was talking about.
Right. So Carlos defaults to superiority paradigm, which is like if you don't understand, then you fight. And it's agree versus disagree. Yeah, it's not even a conscious thought, just a default. You know? So our next Morning show, by the way, is going to be about. It's going to be titled "What Mourner's Culture Is Not." We'll talk about what it isn't.
Yes.
Just by the way, and that's one of the things that it isn't. It's not defaulting to the automatic fight. Yeah, not necessary. It's totally wasteful here. Carlos just assumes that Don Juan is on the up and up, and that Don Juan has a good and positive intent. Then he's going to say, okay, I don't see it, but let me try. Let me assume it is there and then work backwards from there. Very different mindset. Very, very different mindset, right?
Yes.
A big, big, big deal. Very, very big deal. I mean, it's transformative when we do that. When we default into this mode, now you're insisting it is not, rather than insisting it is, but you're just not seeing it yet, coming at it from an entirely different perspective and angle. Let's see. Where. Look into my eyes.
Okay. His eyes were extraordinarily fierce. There was a feeling about them that actually reminded me of something, but I was not sure what it was. I pondered upon it for a moment and then I had a sudden realization. It was not the shape of his eyes nor the shape of his head, but some cold fierceness in his gaze that had reminded me of the look in the eyes of a falcon. At the very moment of that realization, he was looking at me askew,
Askew.
yes, askew, and for an instant, my mind experienced a total chaos. I thought I had seen a falcon's features instead of Don Juan's. The image was too fleeting, and I was too upset to have paid more attention to it. In a very excited tone, I told him that I could have sworn I had seen the features of a falcon on his face. He had another attack of laughter.
Let me
I
scroll.
have, uh,
The very top.
I have seen the look in the eyes of falcons. I used to hunt them when I was a boy, and in the opinion of my grandfather, I was good. He had a leghorn, leghorn,
Leghorn. Leghorn.
okay, leghorn. He had a leghorn chicken farm, and falcons were a menace to his business.
Menace. Yeah.
Shooting menace to his business. Shooting them was not only functional but also right. I had forgotten until that moment that the fierceness of their eyes had haunted me for years. But it was so far in my past that I thought I had lost the memory of it. I used to hunt falcons.
I know it.
Don Juan replied matter of factly. His tone carried such a certainty that I began to laugh. I thought he was a preposterous fellow. He had the gall to sound as if he knew I had hunted falcons. I felt extremely contemptuous of him.
In other words, Carlos is automatically assuming Don Juan is a liar and a BSer.
Yes.
Why do you get so angry?
He asked in a tone of a genuine concern. I did not know why. He began to probe me in a very unusual manner. He asked me to look at him again and tell him about the very funny bird he reminded me of. I struggled against him and out of contempt and said out of contempt said that there was nothing like to talk about. Then I felt compelled to ask him why he had said he knew I used to hunt falcons. Instead of answering me, he again commented on my behavior. He said I was a violent fellow that was capable of frothing at the mouth at the drop of a hat. I protested that was not true. I had always had the idea I was rather congenial
Uh-huh.
and easygoing. I said it was his fault for forcing me out of control with his unexpected words and actions.
The anger.
He asked. I took stock of my feelings and reactions. I really had no need to be angry with him. He again insisted that I should look into his eyes and tell him about the strange falcon. He had changed his wording. He had said before, a very funny bird. Then he substituted it with a strange falcon. The change in wording summed up a change in my own mood. I had suddenly become sad.
All right. So
His
there's something very important here. Uh,
yes,
uh, Terminology and wording. Yes. Uh,
yes,
Don Juan is seeing something, capital, well, he's perceiving something, but he has a visual of it. That's a capital P perception. And
yes,
he's in that capital P perception, he has a visual image of this bird. And he has to communicate this to Carlos. He calls it a very funny bird, but that's not necessarily what Carlos would call it. See, strange falcon, it's
yes,
something else. Unusual falcon, fierce falcon. So when we are looking to communicate visual, we need to share it in with multiple descriptions. If he had said right from the beginning, a very funny bird, a strange falcon, an unusual falcon, a very fierce looking falcon, then Carlos wouldn't be trying to remember a very funny bird. I'm just saying this is just basic psychology of understanding how the memory works and the mind works. Yes. Then he would take those 4 or 5 different descriptions or more, and now it's obvious that Don Juan doesn't quite have the exact description because he's giving multiples. When he says only one, you're looking for a specific thing. But when you have multiple perspectives, you know you're looking for something that's greater than the sum of the parts. Right? You're looking for a greater whole. So your mind starts to put all of those together, and okay, it's not quite this, it's not quite that. You know, it's not quite a funny bird, it's not a strange bird, it's not unusual, maybe it's not fierce. So, and then you're yes, yes, and your mind creates and puts it together and connects the dots. Right. This is very very
yes,
important when we're dealing with things that are particularly visual, but just in general memory. It can be a sound too, doesn't matter. But when we're dealing with the memory, right, and also when we're dealing with conceptuality, in the reverse, uh, this in this case the thing is unknown because Carlos is not remembering it, but it can also be unknown because it's never been encountered before. Likewise, when we're dealing with new conceptions, new understandings, new awarenesses, new ideas, you have to describe it in multiple ways and give the person the opportunity to be able to construct it for themselves. Okay. And Don Juan does not do this on a regular basis, which is why Carlos struggles so often, because his mind is too literal and it goes directly to trying to remember the very funny bird. Okay. Very important to understand the skill of the technique here. Yeah. It's multiple
yes,
perspective shifting, in other words.
yes. He squinted his eyes until they were two slits and said in an overdramatic voice that he was seeing, perceiving a very strange falcon. He repeated his statement 3 times as if he were actually perceiving it there in front of him.
As if. Again,
Yes.
we look at Carlos's language. At that moment in time, he absolutely does not believe Don Juan, regardless of the reality right in front of him, right? Anyway, he can't believe the world is different to the way it works for him. But I also hold Don Juan a bit responsible. He says, I am able to do things that are not common, that are not typical, that are unusual in the everyday world. So yes, I am actually seeing it. Right? When Don Juan said earlier, where he said was like, like you see, he can understand this and make a bridge. He doesn't always. Anyway, don't you remember it?
Um, he asked. I did not remember anything of the sort. What
What's
strange,
strange? Oh, that's him. Sorry. It's
what
Carlos
strange
now.
about the falcon? I asked.
You must tell me that.
I insisted that I had no way of knowing what he was referring to, therefore I could not tell him anything.
Don't fight me. Fight your sluggishness and remember.
I seriously struggled for a moment to figure him out. It did not occur to me that I could just as well have tried to remember.
It did not occur to me that I could just as well have tried to know. In other words, that energy that you're spending fighting, I could have used. This is Carlos talking, right? Carlos, instead of fighting Don Juan, could have used that energy instead to remember. Now,
Yes.
it's just amazing, this default that we fall into, right? Also because you default into superiority. If somebody says something and by implication you should be remembering and you don't, that means you're wrong. Ah, come on, ego. Right? There was a time when you saw a lot of birds.
Oh. So again, I just lost the connection. You
I just go
scrolled
to
it?
the top. I scroll to the top when I get a chance.
Okay, okay. He said as though cueing me. I told him that when I was a child, I had lived on a farm and had hunted hundreds of birds. He said that if that was the case, I should not have any difficulty remembering all the funny birds I had hunted. He looked at me with a question in his eyes, as if he had just given me the last clue. I have hunted so many birds that I can't recall anything about them.
This bird is special.
Say, okay, he replied almost in a whisper.
This bird is a falcon.
I became involved again in figuring out what he was driving at. Was he teasing me? Was he serious? After a long interval, he urged me again to remember. I felt that it was useless for me to try to end his play. The only other thing I could do was to join him. Are you talking about a falcon that I have hunted?
Yes.
He whispered with his eyes closed. So this happened when I was a boy.
Yes,
But you said you are seeing a falcon in front of you now.
I am.
What are you trying to do to me?
I'm trying to make you remember.
What, for heaven's sake?
A falcon swift as light.
He said, looking at me in the eyes. I felt my heart had stopped,
Now look at me.
but I did not. I heard his voice as a faint sound. Some stupendous recollection had taken me wholly, the white falcon. It all began with my grandfather's explosion of anger upon taking account of his young leghorn chickens. They had been disappearing in a steady and disconcerting manner. He personally organized and carried out a meticulous wiggle,
Vigil,
vigil,
vigil, vigil.
vigil. And after days of steady watching, we finally saw a big white bird flying away with a young leghorn chicken in its claws. The bird was fast and apparently knew its route. It swooped down from behind some trees, grabbed the chicken, and flew away through an opening between two branches. It happened so fast that my grandfather had hardly seen it. But I did, and I knew that it was indeed a falcon. My grandfather said that if that was the case, it had to be an albino. We started a campaign against the albino falcon, and twice I thought I had gotten it. It even dropped its prey, but it got away. It was too fast for me. It was also very intelligent. It never came back to hunt on my grandfather's farm. I would have forgotten about it had my grandfather not needled me to hunt the bird. For 2 months, I chased the albino falcon all over the valley where I live. I learned its habits and I could almost intuit its route of flight. Yet, its speed and the suddenness of its appearance would always baffle me. I could boast that I had prevented it from taking its prey, perhaps every time we had met, but I could never bag it. In the 2 months that I carried on this strange war against the albino falcon, I came close to it only once. I had been chasing it all day and I was tired. I had sat down to rest and fall asleep under a tall eucalyptus tree. The sudden cry of a falcon woke me up. I opened my eyes without making any other movement and I saw a whitish bird perched in the highest branches of the eucalyptus tree. It was the albino falcon. The chase was over. It was going to be a difficult shot. I was lying on my back and the bird had its back turned to me. There was a sudden gust of wind and I used it to muffle the noise of lifting my .22 long rifle to take aim. I wanted to wait until the bird had turned or until it had begun to fly so I would not miss it. But the albino bird remained motionless. In order to take a better shot, I would have needed to move, and the falcon was too fast for that. I thought that my best alternative was to wait, and I did. A long, interminable time. Perhaps that affected me. Okay, for that. I thought that perhaps what affected me was the long wait, or perhaps it was the loneliness of the spot where the bird and I were. Suddenly, I felt a chill up my spine, and in an unprecedented action, I stood up and left. I did not even look to see if the bird had flown away. I never
Can you?
attached I never attached any
I want to
significance.
pause here real quick, just to practice a bit of extrapolation and contextual awareness. What is the title of this chapter?
Death as an advisor.
Can you see what's coming
I
from
can,
that last sentence there, or
yes,
two sentences here from, right?
yes.
I suddenly felt a chill up my spine, and in an unprecedented action, I stood up and left. I did not even look to see if the bird had flown away. You got a clue what's coming, yes?
Kind of, yes.
At least what Don Juan is going to connect it to. Yes, not necessarily because Carlos
Yes.
doesn't have any idea. But what is Don Juan? Yes, you can see it coming. Okay. It's very important, this. It's a very powerful skill to develop because you get all these clues all the time and you just have to put it together. Life is like this. Yes. And I suspect my story of the sandwich, the pile of sandwiches, is really a stack. Yeah? Fascinating. That has in some way, a similar thing that I'm not putting it fully together. All right.
Okay.
Anyway.
I never
All
attached,
right. Yeah. Oh, go
I
ahead.
never attached any significance to my final act with the albino falcon. However, it was terribly strange that I did not shoot it. I had shot dozens of falcons before. On the farm where I grew up, shooting birds or hunting any kind of animal was a matter of course. Don Juan listened attentively as I told him the story of the albino falcon.
It's you?
Oh, sorry, it's me. Okay. How did you know about the white falcon? I asked when I had finished.
I saw it.
He replied, Where?
Right here in front of you.
I was not in an argumentative mood anymore. What does all this mean? He said that a white bird like that was an omen and that not shooting it down was the only right thing to do.
Your death gave you a little warning.
He said with a mysterious tone.
It always comes as a chill.
What are you talking about? I said nervously. He really made me nervous with his spooky talk.
You know a lot about birds. You've killed too many of them. You know how to wait. You have waited patiently for hours. I know that. I am perceiving it.
His words caused great turmoil in me. I thought that was annoyed me the most about him was his certainty. I could not stand his dogmatic assuredness about issues in my own life that I was not sure of myself. I became engulfed in my feelings of dejection, and I did not see him leaning over me until he actually had whispered something in my ear. I did not understand at first, and he repeated it. He told me to turn around casually and look at a boulder to my left. He said that my death was there staring at me, and if I turned when he signaled me, I might be capable of seeing it. He signaled me with his eyes. I turned and I thought I saw a nickering movement over the boulder. A chill ran through my body. The muscles of my
Yeah,
abdomen
brilliant.
contracted involuntarily, and I experienced a jolt, a spasm. After a moment, I regained my composure and I explained away the sensation of seeing the flickering shadow as an optical illusion caused by turning my head so abruptly.
Let's stop here. Let's stop here. Right? Let's look at the language again. And I explained away. Why
Yes.
do we do this? Because we are uncomfortable with the unknown. And it
Hmm.
is one of the key reasons for mourners and mourners culture. The unknown has become deeply entrenched and associated in our very DNA with danger, with fear, with stress, with uncomfort, discomfort, awkwardness, uncomfortableness, etc. Right? So Carlos immediately takes the unknown and explains it away into the known. Now he's okay. He doesn't want to deal with the unknown, doesn't want to figure it out, doesn't want to acknowledge that it might be there because, again, there's unpleasant consequences. In other words, he's not willing to face and deal with the awful truth because he doesn't understand that when you do so, you transform it into the awesome truth. Yeah? And we're going to see Don Juan is precisely about to do this. Yeah? Watch, 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 watch. Very, 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 very important, right? So don't do this. In modernist culture, we really make an effort not to explain away things, but to go into it. And instead of seeing it as unknown, we see it as mourners. And when you realize that it is mourners, oh my goodness, we then can get to where Don Juan is trying to take Carlos. We can go there ourselves, just like that. Okay? Death is our
Yes.
eternal companion.
Don Juan said with a more serious air.
It is always to our left at an arm's length. It was watching you when you were watching the white falcon. It whispered in your ear, and you felt it still, as you felt it today. It has always been watching you. It always will until the day it taps
He extended his arm and touched me lightly on the shoulder, and at the same time he made a deep clicking sound with his tongue. The effect was devastating. I almost got sick to my stomach.
you. You're the boy who stalked game and waited patiently, as death waits. You know very well that death is to our left. the same way you were to the left of the white falcon.
His words had this strange power to plunge me into an unwarranted terror. My only defense was my compulsion to commit to writing everything he said. How
How
can
can anyone feel so important when we know that death is stalking us? How can anyone feel so important when we know that death is stalking us? This is the crux. What was the previous
yes,
chapter?
I don't remember, sorry.
Losing self-importance. You got to keep
Yes.
the context
Oh
here,
yes.
right? They're erasing
Yes.
personal history, losing self-importance. Now we're getting to this. They're all connected. They're all connected. They're all techniques for
Stopping the world.
thank you. It's very important to keep the overall in mind. It is critical. Otherwise, you get lost in the details of the story and you don't know what you're about. Clarity of intent. This is all about stopping the world. The intent of this book is stopping the world. And it is the sharing of techniques for stopping the world. When we understand erasing personal history is a function of losing self-importance. If you have no self-importance, well, your personal history just goes away because now you're not stuck in being the same thing all the time. You're flexible, you're fluid, and your past doesn't really become an issue anymore. Likewise, right? When you understand that death is stalking us, and you realize that, oh, you know what, death can tap me anytime, right? In that, right? Anytime, it'll tap there. Yeah? You say,
Yes.
well, death touches us all eventually. So how can I feel important when death can touch me anytime? I'm not getting any breaks because of that. I'm not getting any exception, so not important. And now you change your perspective on the world. Very, very powerful. But also, we're going to use capital L leverage when it comes to death. Because the chapter is called Death as an Advisor, not death as a companion. Right? See, implications. Pay
Yes.
attention, people. It's all there. The clues are there. We need to put it together. All right. Let's I think we leave it here for today because there's no, never mind. We'll finish. We just two more things, right? So yeah, it's not what's going here. I want to finish the story here, right? Um, how can anyone feel so important when we know that death is stalking us?
He asked. I had the feeling my answer was not really needed. I could not have said anything anyway. A new mood had possessed me.
The thing to do when you're impatient is to turn to your left and ask advice from your death. An immense amount of pettiness is dropped if your death makes a gesture to you, or if you catch a glimpse of it, or if you just have the feeling that your companion is there watching you.
He leaned over again and whispered in my ear that if I turned to my left suddenly upon seeing his signal, I could again see my death on the boulder. His eyes gave me an almost imperceptible signal, but I did not dare to look. I, I told him that I believed him and that he did not have to press the issue any further because I was terrified. He had one of his roaring belly laughs. He replied that the issue of her death was never pressed far enough. And I
He
argued that it would.
replied, read that again, sentence again, please, Beena, with
He
the
replied that
sobriety it
the issue.
deserves.
Okay. He replied that the issue of our death was never pressed far enough.
He replied that the issue of our death was never pressed far enough. Very important statement. Yeah.
Yes. And I argued that it it would be meaningless for me to dwell upon my death, since such a thought would only bring discomfort and fear.
Look at the assertion here, the arrogance. Since such a thought would only bring discomfort and fear. You're full of crap. Death is the only wise advisor that we have. Whenever you feel, as you always do, that everything is going wrong and you're about to be annihilated, turn to your death and ask if that is so. Your death will tell you that you're wrong. that nothing really matters outside its touch. Your death will tell you, I haven't touched you yet.
He shook his head and seemed to be waiting for my reply. I had none. My thoughts were running rampant. He had delivered a staggering blow to my my
Egotism.
egotism. Yes, my egotism. The pettiness of being annoyed with him was monstrous in the light of my death. I had the
The
feeling he was
pettiness, read that sentence again, please. Very important there.
the pettiness of being annoyed with him was monstrous in the light of my death. I had the
I tried to
feeling
remember this. Right? It's very important. When we look at things to say we're getting all annoyed and bothered, is it really important? Does it matter in the context of your death or not? Yes, a lot of things, oh no, it doesn't matter whatsoever. Right? But so this is very important to keep in mind. It's very, very helpful, very, very useful. It changes everything. Yes, very big deal.
okay, I have a question. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes, if it is like that, then nothing actually matters. Nothing. But
correct.
when we are in a situation when people are being inappropriate, okay, mean, nasty, or whatever. Okay, I'm just using different things. And then you feel that okay, this is something not right. Then it is
Yeah.
going to happen that okay, yes, you will feel that okay, seriously, why I'm in this situation. So yes, you will feel a bit upset or sometimes very seriously upset or annoyed. But it is not from you, it is from other people. What has this like okay, this the understanding of death as an advisor is going to be
All right,
beneficial in that.
we'll continue this discussion, this particular point tomorrow about
Okay,
things mattering and what to do because it's connected to impeccability. Right? But let's
okay,
finish the story and we'll pick up on this tomorrow. Okay?
okay.
We'll do our takeaway, in other words, of this chapter. We'll do the takeaway tomorrow. So let's finish the story. Yes. Yes.
He said softly after a long pause.
One of us here has to change and past. One of us here has to learn again that death is the hunter and that it is always to one's left. One of us here has to ask death's advice and drop the cursed pettiness that belongs to people who live their lives as if death will never tap them.
We remained quiet for more than an hour. Then we started walking again. We meandered. What is the
No,
pronunciation?
meandered.
Meandered. Okay. We meandered in the desert chaparral for hours. I did not ask him if there was any purpose to it. It did not matter. Somehow he had made me recapture an old feeling, something I had quite forgotten. The sheer joy of just moving around without attaching any intellectual purpose to it. I wanted him to let me catch a glimpse of whatever I had seen on the boulder. Let me see that shadow again.
See, Carlos and his pettiness. Yes, he's talking about pettiness, let go, but he doesn't say death, he says shadow. Come on, Carlos. Doesn't want to acknowledge the point. See? Childish. Childish. Sorry, childish. You mean your death, don't you?
He replied with a touch of irony in his voice. For a moment, I felt reluctant to voice it. Yes, let me see my death once again.
Not now. You're too solid.
I beg your pardon?
Do you need, hang on, do you need an explanation from Don Juan to understand what he means? Do
I
you?
beg your pardon?
Hang on, I'm asking you, Beena. Not now.
No,
You're too solid. Do you need an
no,
explanation? You can figure it
no.
out, right? You don't need
Yes,
to have him explain it.
yes, yes. I beg your pardon? He began to
He
laugh,
be,
and for some
yeah, sorry.
unknown reason, his laughter was no longer offensive and insidious, as it had been in the past. I do not think that it was different from the point of view of its pitch, or its loudness, or the spirit of it. The new element was my mood. In view of my impending death, my fears and annoyance were nonsense. Let me talk to plants then, I said.
Sorry, you took it. He said, you go from one extreme to the other. Be still. There is no need to talk to plants unless you want to know their secrets. And for that, you need the most unbending intent. So save your good wishes. There is no need to see your death either. It is sufficient that you feel its presence around. We will continue with this tomorrow. We'll do a takeaway of this tomorrow, right? Because there's a lot of things that come up from this. Takeaways are very, 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 very important. But I also want to simply just make a point, just by the by, the point that we can cultivate putting things together through anticipation, extrapolation, inference, implication, etc. Right? Many things tell us what's coming. If you develop that skill and not wait until you're told, sometimes you won't be told, then you have that ability. So figure it out and then see if you got close, right? And keep testing, keep refining the skill. It's a fantastic, fantastic, fantastic skill. Okay? Very, very, very powerful. All right. I'm sorry, Lisa, that we didn't see you. But anyway, I'm keen to just explain to you, but maybe you did watch the videos. Yeah, what mourners culture is in a simple way. Difficult to say, but we'll get there. So all of what we're doing is the application. For instance, this comprehension skill, deduction skill, figuring out skill, an awareness skill, an understanding skill. This is part of mourners culture. Because it's a culture that revolves around personal development, a culture that revolves around mourners. And of course, how do you get to mourners? How do you perceive mourners? How do you connect to mourners? Through using skills like this, right? Because mourners is obviously, it's not usualness. By definition, it wouldn't be more. Yeah, it wouldn't be mourners. So we have to make that extra effort to get there, right? It's kind of a duh when you think about it, right? It's self-explanatory, which is the magic of mourners and mourners culture. Self-explanatory. When you make that effort to take the seed, which is, in this case, mourners is a seed, yeah? And you water that seed, water it through attention, water it through perspective shifting, water it through thinking things through to the end. Many ways to water seeds, yeah? Very powerful skills. Powerful skills. All right. On that note, we'll leave it right there. And well, I'll be doing the show tonight. You're not going to be there tonight, right? You said, Beena?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So maybe I'll see you a little later then, before you go to bed. All right. All right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay.
Bye-bye. We'll leave it right
Okay.
there, Beena, with that. Yeah. Jump right
Okay,
away.
everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you are watching us recorded, please, if you find anything interesting, unusual, or maybe you don't agree with that, because for us, agreement and disagreement is just it's just matter of communication. We
We're
don't
not
think about
interested in
it.
agreement and disagreement. We want to understand.
Yes. So
Couldn't
if
get
you
two
have
hoots
your
about
own,
agreement or disagreement.
if you have a different perspective, if you have something to share, we would love to receive that. This is what we are
Yeah.
all about. So please do
Yeah.
share, click and like and subscribe to this channel, because if it is something, it has some value for you, please make it obvious for the universe that this is what I want in my life, because universe is just going to maximize wherever you are going to pay attention. So pay attention wisely, be impeccable when you are spending your time, energy, and attention. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you guys tomorrow. Bye for now.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.